shall know me, see why in shadow I hide. Look at your face in the mirror, I am there inside.
Angel of music, guide and guardian, grant to me your glory. Angel of music, hide no longer, come to me, strange angel.
I am your angel of music. Come to me, angel of music.
Who's that voice? Who is that in there?
I am your angel of music. Come to me, angel of music.
A warm welcome to Ethan Freeman. Ethan, how nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
You first auditioned in Vienna. What was that like, and did you know anything about the story back then?
I think I had actually read the original novel at some point much earlier in my life. And by that time, I think I had been able by then to familiarize myself with some of the songs from the show. The show had opened in London already, and when we found out that auditions were happening for the Vienna production, I was doing Cats at the time in Hamburg, and I was able to get hold of Music of the Night, and I think the original London recording had already been released, and I knew Steve Barton a bit, who was obviously playing the original Raoul, and then had gone on to New York. So I was able to familiarize myself a little bit with how the musical was constructed musically, and I'd probably heard most of the original cast recording by that time I auditioned, I think anyway, if memory serves me.
I think I heard you say you saw Michael Crawford too.
I did. After I had been cast for Vienna, which was during the time that I was performing in Cats, and I had then left the show in the summer of '88, knowing that I would be doing the show in Vienna in the winter of that year, or starting rehearsals. I was able to see the show on Broadway several times and meet with Harold Prince in his office and discuss the show and the role. So that was the point at which I saw Michael Crawford, who played every show at that point still.
Okay.
Yeah, very impressive, of course.
Must have been because, well, you saw the very first version and not many people have.
No, that's true. I think
Yes.
that was a tremendous advantage of starting in with the show and with the role at a fairly early point in its development, and being able to get all my information from the horse's mouth, as it were, and being able to watch the show with the actor who, in my opinion, was the best I had ever seen in the role since then, my personal opinion. I really thought what Michael did was very, very moving and very, very precise, and you could just see that I think I saw the show 4 times with him. You could see how precise his work was every night to hit the beats that he wanted, and they were beats which for me made very innate sense.
Was there anything, was there anything specific you took from him for your interpretation?
Specifically, not exactly, because I knew I'm a different person. I was a completely different age, and trying to borrow things from another actor is usually a losing proposition, one way or the other. and vocally I had almost no resemblance to him. So there wasn't anything on the vocal side that I would say I would try to take from him. But what he did with the part, the way he structured it, still left a very big impression on me. And I know that combining that with what Harold Prince was telling me about how he saw the role and where he wanted, what he wanted to happen in the role, I'm sure that my original interpretation in the Vienna production was an amalgamation of those two bits of input, obviously my own input as a young actor and the structure that Hal and Michael had brought to the role when I was able to see it on Broadway.
Nighttime sharpens, heightens each sensation. Darkness wakes and stirs imagination. Silently the senses abandon their defenses, helpless to resist the notes I write, for I compose the music of the night. Slowly, gently, night unfurls its splendor. Grasp it, sense it, tremulous and tender. Hearing is believing, music is deceiving. Hard as lightning, soft as candlelight. Dare you trust the music of the night? Close your eyes, for your eyes will only tell the truth, and the truth isn't what you want to see. In the dark it is easy to pretend that the truth is what it ought to be. Softly, deftly, music shall caress you. Hear it, feel it, secretly possess you. Open up your mind, let your fantasies unwind in this darkness which you know you cannot fight. The darkness of the music of the night. Close your eyes, start a journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the world you knew before. Close your eyes and let music set you free. Only then can you belong to me. Floating, falling, sweet intoxication. Touch me, trust me, savor each sensation. Let the dream begin, let your darker side give in to the power of the music that I write, the power of the music of the night.
That, of course, was Michael Crawford with Music of the Night. Now we return to Ethan Freeman.
Your physicality for the role and your movements, they're very different. So how did you decide them for yourself?
I saw, I think at some point I realized that the Phantom has to be physically very large to be effective in that costume, in that fantastic scenery. And one thing that Michael had was extreme grace physically, and I definitely wanted to maintain that aspect of a Souveränität, as you'd say in German, that the Phantom was masterful in everything that he did and everything that he had tremendous command over himself. That was, for me, perhaps in retrospect, his way of coping with his situation was just to be tremendously in control. And I think that's also working with Gillian Lynn and with Annie Allen, who was Gillian's assistant, who helped put the production in Vienna together. I mean, we looked at various ways of moving, and I think that I wanted the role to have almost a balletic command of the body. And that's probably the starting off point from where I went physically over the years. I'm sure that from production to production, I may have developed this or that thing. And another thing that Michael did, which I found very important and adapted to my own way of performing, was his use of his hands. I found was extremely graceful, elegant, and expressive. And I wanted to make sure that my hands were doing a lot of acting with me. And I think that's another part of the physicality that I was able to, that I found important for the part. And if you can't use your face, you have to find other means to express yourself.
You are known as the Leroux Phantom among most Phantom fans. Was that a conscious decision?
No, but yes. I definitely wanted to find a character who was as close to the original Phantom source character as possible, within the constraints, probably the wrong word, within the parameters that were set by Andrew and Hal and Gillian. I definitely wanted to get as close to a character who comes from the romantic period, not in the sense of love romance, but in the sense of the idea of one being redeemed by love, which I thought, as in the passage of the Phantom that you sent me to read, is very clear that Eric is, for me, redeemed in a very romantic sense. Although obviously in the musical and in Hal's conception of the musical, it has a lot of physical and sensual content. I also wanted to capture a 19th century Phantom rather than only the 20th century Phantom, because for me that made this character and the story more universal. And if that is the case, that I'm known as the Leroux Phantom among whoever, then I guess I was doing my job the way I wanted to, which is nice.
Yes, you were the first Phantom I saw, and well, to me, you're always the Phantom, because how you played it really touched me. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, fa, mi. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, mi, do. Now you.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, fa, mi. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, mi, do.
Now move the do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, fa, mi. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, mi, do.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re,
mi. Take a breath on one, and after three.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, re, fa, mi. Breathing after one and after three.
Breathing in the air, an ebb and flow. Breathing, taking care, fa, re, mi, do.
Breathing out the air from deep below. Ready for the run from do to do.
Freeman and Anne Gurner performing your music from the musical Phantom by Clubhead and Jetson. Earlier in the episode you heard Where in the World from Richard Wright from the same musical. Now we return to our interview.
What do you think is most misunderstood about Eric among most people?
Oh, I don't know if I would call it anything misunderstanding. Part of the point I was making before about the Phantom being redeemed in a sense of romantic literature, as in the Romantic period, was the idea that it would be very hard for a person with a true psychosis, someone who's truly deeply hallucinatingly mentally ill, perhaps psychopathic, wrong word, wrong term, I suppose, to be redeemed in the sense of being healed in a certain way, finding happiness and redemption in Christine's, in just kissing her forehead. And so I always found a need to make sure that I was playing someone who was traumatized and perhaps sociopathically orientated due to his lifelong trauma, but also someone who was not completely lacking in control of his mental facilities. For me, that would have made it very difficult to accept Christine's romantic love in the sense that Leroux meant it, rather than a physical sexual connection between the two of them, which is part of the musical itself. And that was very much part of Hal's concept, was about people with physical disabilities and their physical and sexual and romantic needs. He based the staging, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, on a documentary film called The Skin Horse, which deals with people with grave physical disabilities and their sexual needs and desires. And that was, I think, one of the important jumping off points for Hal's staging. Having said that, now I think after all these years, I've seen just what incredible psychological effects trauma at an early age can have for a person, and certainly can accept and explain that some actors who play the Phantom take the wildness and anger and constant rage perhaps a notch further than I wanted to take it. I think it's a legitimate way of playing the role. It was not my choice at the time, for the reasons that I've said. But I don't think there are any misunderstandings in that sense. I think everyone approaches that man's fate in their own way, with their own mindset, with their own personal injuries, wounds, feelings about themselves, whatever. I think that's what makes the show and the role so universal, is that most people see something negative, something ugly, something misformed, something maladjusted in their own personalities, and reflect on that, and the Phantom is a conduit for those feelings. I think that's why the show has, and the story itself has, remained so universally popular all these decades.
Yeah, see, well, the Eric was to me too, because during the time I was suffering from bullying, and I had some other trauma in my life, and I could always relate to Eric in that way, that powerless way of not being able to stand up for yourself in the way you would want to, and feeling different and all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting looking at the show, and now in light of contemporary social concepts, and thinking at the same time he's a victim, at the same time he's grooming and pursuing a vulnerable young woman. He would probably be considered the complete villain at the moment. And I'd hope he doesn't get canceled one day for that reason. He's sort of the world's most famous incel. But I think that he's still seen in a sympathetic light for most people, because he really is a victim of circumstance.
Yes, and I think the problem would be to see him in this time, when we're talking about someone who lived at that time and who had to react in a completely different way than we would now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the world around him now would perhaps be a bit kinder, or a little bit more understanding, at least. But
I think he would get help in his early childhood now, and not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah.
I would hope he would.
Yeah. Yeah. Where were all those psychologists when we needed them back then, in the early part of the century? Yeah, so I think that's, it's a character that leaves a great deal of room for the actor to interpret. And that's why there have been so many really good Phantoms over the years.
I think you can always put a bit of yourself at that moment in it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's what all of us will tell you as you interview various people who've played the role. I'm sure that, we've all, you look to find your vulnerabilities, you look to find who you are when you're lonely, who you are when you're in pain. And I think certainly every actor I've ever known has dealt with his or herself in that sense, and is in that sense, I wouldn't say it's an easy role to play, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And that combined that with the vocal demands makes it a difficult role, on the other hand, to play, because you need to be able to combine so many different aspects: singing, physicality, and all the different acting necessities. Makes it a tough but wonderful role to play.
Would you play him again?
I would. No one would cast me anymore. I don't think. The problem is, the older a Phantom becomes, the more the relationship to Christine would become less legitimate, particularly in contemporary eyes. Put it this way, a 30 or 40, 45-year-old man chasing an 18-year-old girl is already probably way over the border our contemporary thoughts about how relationships should work. But at 62, I think that's pushing it a little far. For someone of my age, to play the part again would not be particularly realistic or legitimate anymore, to be quite honest. Although obviously it's a role that as you get older and have more experience in life, and now I have my own children, and they have their own aspects. I'm sure there are probably a few more levers I could press to find something new to play in the role.
Maybe Love Never Dies one day.
I actually always thought when I saw the show in London with a wonderful performer, it was not the original, it was the understudy at the time, who was fantastic, but I thought he was a bit on the young side for someone who by that point should probably have been 50. But again, 50 is not 60. And anyway, again, the makers of the show at that point obviously decided that the Phantom wasn't going to be getting older, he was going to be getting younger. From the 10 years between the end of Phantom and the beginning of Love Never Dies. And they also set the role quite a bit higher, which I was able to manage in the studio recording of Love Never Dies. But I'm not sure I'd want to have a crack at that 8 times a week or even twice a week at this point. But I love to sing Till I Hear You Sing Once More is another fantastic cracker of a song from Andrew, and I'm happy to sing that at concerts as well and maintain a bit of phantomness.
You're listening to Theatreland Radio.
Pacing the floor, the moments creep, yet I can't bear to sleep till I hear you sing. And weeks pass and months pass, seasons fly. Still you don't walk through the door, and in a haze I count the silent days till I hear you sing once more. And sometimes in darkness I dream that you are there, but wake holding nothing but the cold night air. And years come and years go, time runs dry. Still I ache down to the core. My broken soul can't be alive and whole till I hear you sing once more. And music, your music, it teases at my ear. I turn and it fades away, and you're not here. Let hopes pass, let dreams pass, let them die. Without you, what are they for? I always feel no more than halfway. 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 I always feel no more than
Freeman with Till I Hear You Sing. Ethan will return to us later to reveal all about a very special Phantom-themed painting he's auctioning up for La Cave. A very special contribution to our cause, because, remember, we are all doing this for La Cave de Gaston Leroux. Check the Theatreland website for info.
For the love of musicals, you're listening to Theatreland Radio.
Later on, we will be joined by Jonathan Roxmouth and Mike Sterling, but first, after this next song, we will be joined by Peter Karrie.
Oh, Christine, if only you could weep for me like that.
I did weep for you. Once.
Out of pity, Christine, not love. But it is only a question of time. In time you will grow to love me. I know it. Ne'er forsake me, here remain. Share with me my dark domain. Beautiful flower of maidenkind, here in the bower where our love's enshrined, give me your loving care. Oh, free me from this dark despair. Tender Zion of Philomel, here in the shadows, weave your magic spell. My maid of music, weave your magic spell. Why don't you swear here to join me, where I can call you mine forever? Oh, my Christine. Ne'er forsake me, here remain. Share with me my dark domain. Beautiful flower of maidenkind, here in the bower where our love's enshrined. Here in the shadows, weave your magic spell. My gentle maiden, weave your magic spell. Here in the shadows, weave your
This was a song from the original cast recording of Phantom the Musical by Ken Hill, the musical that inspired Andrew Lloyd Webber. Now, guest reporter Tim Bliss interviews Peter Karrie, who will also give a special performance of one of his favorite Phantom songs.
Peter, let's talk about Phantom of the Opera, which is based on a book by Gaston Leroux. You played that role for almost 10 years, over 10 years.
Did.
How did you become cast as the role of Eric?
Oh, well, that was really good. I was playing Jean Valjean in Les Miserables, and which is in the Palace Theatre on end of Shaftesbury Avenue at the time. And there was a pal of mine called Martin Smith who was playing, just taking it over. He'd only taken over a matter of 3 or 4 months, and then got taken seriously ill with a dreadful kind of condition and had to leave the show. They then came in to see me and said, listen, do you fancy doing it? And I said, well, I've never even seen the show, so they took me over and showed it to me, and they said, you fancy doing it? And I said, yeah, okay. And so they shoved me straight into rehearsals the next day, and within 2 weeks I was playing the role. So I just jumped from one of Cameron's musicals to another, and it was a great move.
Do you recall your first performance as Eric? What were sort of the feelings and emotions you were having at the time?
I don't recall it. I'll be honest with you. It all a blur.
Right. Okay.
The one thing you did when you learned these roles is what you did in the rehearsal room, you took on the stage. In other words, when I was rehearsing, Jeff Ferris was the in-house director, and he was the one that was putting me into Phantom. And we had a studio much like this one, except it had mirrors on every wall. So whichever way you looked, you could see yourself from a different angle. And so we went over there with the pianist, and we started working through the show, and I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel it, not for nothing. And we were in real trouble. I thought I was going to lose it. And then all of a sudden, Jeff had one of his brainwaves, and he said, go and get changed. So they dressed me up in the Phantom suit, put all the makeup on, all the wigs, all the makeup, everything was stuck down, and I felt different. I walked out and I could see myself in all the mirrors as the Phantom. I had the mask on, and I had the suit on, and I had the makeup on, and I was the Phantom. And all of a sudden, my hands started doing kind of that type of thing, and I started expressing myself, because you haven't got a face. Your face is obliterated. It's under a pile of glue and mask and prosthetics and so forth. So you have to use your body to move the story along and to show your feelings. And all of a sudden, the Phantom was born, and it was as simple as that. Because
Eric, in the story, has quite a lot of pain. With your face covered, how did you perform that?
Well, exactly. That's what you did in a rehearsal room, is you learned how to convey your feelings with what you've got on. And your voice, you had to change your voice. I used to have a kind of sad voice, an angry voice, different types of voices the Phantom had to have. And like when he's up in The Angel and Christine's just run off with Raoul at the end of Act 1. I gave you my music. Yeah, it's all pain.
Yeah.
And then you let it go at the end of that.
Pete, they say that playing the Phantom, because it becomes such a massive part of your life, it never ever leaves you. How true is that for you?
Very, very. I used to do 8 shows a week.
Right, okay.
And on the Sunday, which is the only day you get off, I just used to sit like a zombie at the dinner table. I had a lovely house, but I didn't go outside the door. Maybe I walked around the garden a couple of times, because you're just getting over 8 shows of doing Phantom. Now, he's only on stage for 40 minutes, but all the time he's not on stage, he's doing things backstage. He's up in the proscenium arch, he's up in at the back in box 5, he's all over the place, and he's getting changed into different costumes, and he's in the wings, he's all about the place. And the pressure of being the Phantom was huge, so that when you got your Sunday, you just went, and you just sat like a zombie. I could eat my Sunday dinner, and that was about it, really.
What were some of your most memorable moments from playing the Phantom?
God. Well, there was a lot of moments there, 10 years worth of moments, and there was a lot of kind of comical moments that stuck out to me. We used to have fun. When I was playing it over in Canada, and it also happened a couple of times in London, but in Canada it was a nightmare. It was in the Pantages Theatre, and Pantages Theatre is in the centre of Toronto, and it's got a big lane that runs down the back of it where the stage door is and so forth. And on the other side of the lane is another theatre stage door. So traffic was quite huge. And when you get into that boat, radio-controlled boat, a little guy going up and down the wings, directing, where your boat's going. That's great. That's lovely. All I had to do is, "Down once more to that dungeon of my blood," and all that. It was great. Christine sitting in the prow of the boat, lovely, beautiful. But if a taxi went past, you weren't sure where you were going, because a number of times when you started coming out of the wings on the one side, and instead of turning left down stage to where the audience is, no, you just kept going. And so I ended up in the wings on the other side, and we'd have to leap out the boat. I'd have to get out of Christine's hand, drag her out the boat, and we'd walk on water for a couple of minutes where we walked back into the scene, so that we didn't lose the musical kind of side of things. That was a funny moment. There was quite a few, actually. Also in Canada, we had a Raoul who was called Briar and Knees, a lovely guy, and he was fabulous. He used to wear a wig, slightly thin on top, and that was great. And in the final layer, you get that moment where the Phantom's just kissed Christine, and he suddenly realized that she's kissed him because she wants me to let Raoul go. And she's willing to sacrifice herself for that. So I then walk across to the organ, which is on the other side of the stage, and pick up a candle, which is a pyro, and then walk to where Raoul is strung up by the neck.
Right.
And God love him, he's in discomfort there. And then I touch the actual rope around his neck, but the long bit coming down to his neck, with the pyro. It goes poof, and then he's free. Well, I did that on this one day, and a couple of sparks fell off it and fell onto Byron's head.
Right.
And his poor wig caught fire. So Christine then battened him on his head to try and put the fire out. And I'm looking at it and thinking, oh, God. So I then went and I'm trying to put the fire out as well. Because it really was, there was a roaring fire going on there. That was quite a funny moment.
In terms of the story, The Phantom, why do you think it's so enduring to fans? And it's been like that for so long?
Well, but it's a brilliantly written piece. Andrew wrote a brilliant score for it. And the writers that wrote the lyrics put together a great, and they examined the Phantom and how he could play it, because he's mad as mad as you can be, but he still could put his plight across. He was in love with a beautiful, beautiful woman, young woman, and he wasn't that young. He was and he definitely wasn't very pretty, but he was a genius at his things. So you've then got this combination of beauty and ugly kind of guy, but the ugly guy is so talented, and he had already sold himself to Christine by looking after her career. It was him that got her the leading role, and it was him that had trained her and taught her how to sing without revealing himself.
Right.
And she thought it was the opera ghost, it was the spirit of her father. So it was a lovely combination. And when she finally met him, she wasn't that upset by his ugliness. Or don't forget, he had a lovely mask, porcelain mask on, which hid most of his face, and he had wigs on and so forth. So he looked quite dashing. I don't think in the morning getting up she would be feeling the same way, but kind of going to bed, it was kind of very handsome guy, really. And she bought into it wholesale. And so when he gets revealed on stage, then his pain comes out. When he crawls across the floor you know, to kind of get to her in the opening scene, the first layer, that is really poignant. And he's lost his mask, and she picks it up and gives it to him. And that's a great moment there, right there, was where the heart of it all lay. Yeah. But then he says, right, come with me, and he marches off with her. He's back on form, back on where he was.
I'd just like you to give a message to some of your fans, if possible, watching.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for being such great supporters of this show, and also myself. I can't explain just how much joy I've had out of performing for you, and I sincerely hope that you enjoy what we've done, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime in the future. Take care. Be safe.
In pursuit of your deepest urge, in pursuit of that wish which till now has been silent, silent. I have brought you that our passions may fuse and merge in your mind. Succumb to me, disrupt your defenses, completely succumb to me. Now you are here with me, no second thoughts, you decided. The point of no return, no backward glances, our games of make-believe are at an end. Past all thought of if or when, no use resisting, abandon for to let the dream descend. What raging fire shall flood the soul? What rich desire unlocks its door? What sweet seduction lies before? At the point of no return, the final threshold, the bridge is crossed, so stand and watch it burn. We pass the point of no return. From your solitude, say you want me with you here beside you. Anywhere you go, let me go too. Christine, that's all.
Thank you so much, Peter Karrie and Tim Bliss. In the next hour, we will return with more phantomy goodness. Jonathan Roxmouth and Mike Sterling will be here, and Ethan Freeman will return with more about his amazing painting. Stay tuned, don't forget to donate. See you soon.
But apart from you is horrid. I wish I could tell him.
I wish I could feel
If only my feelings could stay so real. Apart from you, there is no music.
apart from you. There is no joy.
My life returns to ordinary. The special glow we have is gone. Apart from you, there is no music. Apart from you, there is no joy. My life returns to ordinary. The special glow we have is gone.
Somehow senses surpass limits, though so far we get to touch. Wings of joy will be our heaven. Nothing will be able us too much. Of you and me, the world can be sure. Performances which are unique. Whatever we achieve together will never suit the mind or me. Now you must sing for me, my angel. When you are near and sing, it is only a moment past miraculous. Gaze only at those in the first tier. Christine, look only at the first tier.
Yes, my angel. Apart from you, I pray.
Enunciate.
I pity those
Project.
with this ordeal.
Our world will have no day, no night time. Our perfect world, where God and will not intervene. Your audience, please.
Somehow senses surpass limits. Though so far we
Yet to touch, wings of joy will be our heaven. Nothing can or ever will be able as too much. Still attend and close your eyes now. Our perfect world is almost here. Apart from you, just cannot happen. May heaven help. Oh, so
The Requiem Mass is not at all gay, whereas the Wedding Mass, you can take my word for it, is magnificent. You must take a resolution and know your own mind. I can't go on living like this, like a mole in a burrow. Don Juan Triumphant is finished, and now I want to live like everybody else. I want to have a wife like everybody else and take her out on Sundays. I have invented a mask that makes me look like anybody. People will not even turn round in the streets. You will be the happiest of women, and we will sing all by ourselves till we swoon away with delight. You are crying. You are afraid of me. Yet I am not really wicked. Love me, and you shall see. All I wanted was to be loved for myself. If you loved me, I should be as gentle as a lamb, and you could do anything with me that you pleased.
This is Phantoms for Leroux.
Coming to you live from the UK, celebrating the world of theatre. You're listening to Theatreland Radio.
This is Phantoms for Leroux.
Then I came back to Christine. She was waiting for me. Yes, she was waiting for me, erect and alive, a real living bride, as she hoped to be saved. And when I came forward, more timid than a little child, she did not run away. No, she stayed. She waited for me. I even believed, Daroga, that she put out her forehead a little, oh, not much, just a little, like a living bride. And I kissed her. And she did not die. Oh, how good it is, Daroga, to kiss somebody on the forehead. You can't tell, but my mother, Daroga, my poor and happy mother, would never let me kiss her. She used to run away and throw me my mask, nor any other woman ever. And you can understand my happiness was so great. I cried, and I fell at her feet crying, and I kissed her feet, her little feet, crying. You're crying too, Daroga. And she cried also. The angel cried. Yes, Daroga, I felt her tears flow on my forehead, on mine. They were soft, they were sweet, they trickled under my mask, they mingled with my tears in my eyes. Yes, they flowed between my lips. Listen, Daroga, listen to what I did. I tore off my mask so as not to lose one of her tears. She did not run away, and she did not die. She remained alive, weeping over me, with me. We cried together. I have tasted all the happiness the world can offer.
Every broken-hearted fool who ever cried themselves to sleep should thank the God above tonight for whoever made them weep. You see, I envy every single tear, every sob, every sigh, because the love you lost at least you once possessed, and the pain will fade in time. But the love you never had is etched in stone forever, reminding you of what might have been. Shadow so close, but when you reach, there's no one there. Every heartsick little wretch who ever fell down on their knees should glorify each tearful night and eulogize their misery, because pain is proof that you're alive, and soon enough the healing starts, and through it all one truth is left behind: someone cared enough to break your heart. But the love you never had leaves you nothing more than empty, dreaming only dark, silent dreams. The love you never
That's how it feels when you reach through the darkness each night, and she never is there and she'll never be there. You rationalize that it's all for the better this way. Love is never worth the price that you pay, but you know it's a lie. You rant and you rave at the God who made you this way. As long as all your sins are prepaid, why not raise a little hell on your way to the grave? Then you look in her eyes, remember why you still dream.
What an amazing night this is! When we announced this event, every Phantom we asked agreed to join in, and fans around the world immediately supported us. This says so much about how the Phantom story has touched people's hearts over the years. This is such an international event as well, with artists joining us from Germany, Australia, South Africa and of course the UK. We are all together to help this fabulous restaurant in France dedicated to the author we know so well. A wonderful detail about the restaurant: Veronique has turned Gaston's actual bed into the bar, the very bed he slept in when writing Phantom. If you want a chance to see this for yourself, remember, go to the Theatreland website and donate. After the next song we will be joined by Mike Sterling, who talks to us about how it feels to have been both Raoul and the Phantom.
Well, if you are the creator of such beauty, why have you forsaken the world?
What do they know of beauty? Up there is darkness. Up there, insane. Will you live in chaos with the bitter and the plain? Why dwell in shadows? Here the light has shone. We'll leave the world to its madness. We can live in bliss. Alone, here nothing is missing. Nothing is gone. Perfect music will go on and on. Mine is the gift. I'll make you see. All you must do is sing only for me, singing together and in love. Perfect music leads to perfect love. Perfect spirit, imperfect man, you could learn to love me as I swear I truly am. I know your terror, I feel your pain. I saw your soul through the mirror, and I saw the same. Here nothing is missing, nothing is gone. Perfect music will go on and on and on. I'll always love you. I'll never leave. You'll never hunger. You'll never grieve. Living forever hand in glove. Perfect music, perfect forever tender, forever dear, forever faithful, forever here. I'm always passion, you always fire. I'll always be your fulfillment, and you always be my desire. Here nothing is missing, nothing is gone. Perfect music will go on and on and on. Join us together, hand in glove. Perfect music, perfect love, living forever. Hand in glove, perfect music.
That was perfect music from Rosen and Shearhorn's Phantom of the Opera. Now please welcome Mike Sterling. Mike, thank you for being here.
Annie, thank you very much for asking me on here.
Did you know much about Phantom before you auditioned?
Right, no, because when I first, any kind of Phantom of the Opera, I was 17 actually, and I did what was the equivalent of the X Factor back in 1987 with a show called New Faces, which was filmed up in Birmingham, and I was told before I went on that to listen to Music of the Night, and my friend said to me, if you do that song, I'm telling you, it'll do really well for you. I listened to it and I absolutely freaked and went, wow, that's an amazing piece. I just don't think I'm capable of that. So I chose a Chopin piece, and I did the Chopin piece. Did very well for me, and then as time went on, I started to learn Music of the Night and started to get into more of Andrew Lloyd Webber music. But and then as time progressed, because I did Les Mis, of course, before Phantom, and in 1991 I auditioned for Les Mis. I went to Les Mis. I was in the company in London for 10 months, went to Manchester, did 18 months, and then I auditioned for Raoul. It was then I started to kind of get into a bit more about the book, but I was more into the Raoul character, of course, at the time. But the music was so powerful that it really kind of spoke to me, and it gripped me for vast proportions of the day, I would say. And now I'm, of course, with the history as it presents itself, you can see exactly why it did and how it did, and certainly they were very, very moved by the story of Eric, and that sort of came later, really. That came later and deeper as time went on.
What do you think is different between the book and the musical, and what inspired you in your performance of Eric?
Of course, the thing with books is they can go into into such detail because unlike a musical and unlike a film, a film has a director, producer, and so forth and so on, but particularly a director that's taking it a certain way. And same with the musical. I mean, obviously, reading a book, you're kind of like your own director. You're your own light designer because you're kind of making up these visions in your head. And I found the book quite vivid and very very inspiring and informative. Certainly, the way that it was describing the Paris Opera House and all these caverns and everything underground, and Eric, and certainly about with regards to his first. Or memory rather that I used to draw on quite a lot, that he used to recall things like the mask going on the face as soon as he was born. And when you think about it, very, very little human contact, because his mother, just as soon as she was born, stuck a mask on his face and was repulsed. So really didn't really much human contact. So where did you hear that story? That's the thing that strikes me really about that. But I used to draw on a lot of things that I heard from the book, and it was very immersing. You know, it's very deep. Gaston's book is very, very deep, and it's very, very helpful. And I found it most revealing in lots of ways. So you get chapters and chapters. You know, you get lots of things like Bouquet, for example, who's a small little part a smaller part rather in the show. Madame Giry, for example. You know, there's so much more depth to do with all these incredible characters, and Carlotta, or Bianchi. You know, all that sort of depth there. So the book was certainly it's good, I think, as far as a reference is concerned, to really understand what is going on, what people are saying about you, certainly as the role. But of course, then you've got to kind of take it organically when you're doing a role like Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera. It's a different work, and it's to work in a different way because there's a lot of information to portray, but you don't have the length of time people have within a book to relay that. So it's a lot more condensed, but the book is certainly helpful. You know, you've got the information then to use.
Could you relate to Eric and his pain?
Well, I can tell you that I didn't know, when I first took on the role, when I first played the role, actually, I wasn't actually playing the Phantom. I was playing Raoul, and I was thrown on. I was thrown on one night after 20 minutes. 20 minutes before the show started, I was asked, could I go on and play the Phantom, because his voice was going and everything else, and he had some throat problems. So, I'd been looking at the role because Andrew had asked me to look at it, and Cameron McIntosh, and said, look, we want to kind of see how you go with this. And I'd been looking at the role, and I'd turning up rehearsals and things, and understudy calls, etc. But of course, I'm doing a lead 8 times a week, so it was tough because you had to kind of come in for calls and things as well as doing a main role. But I found it most enjoyable, actually. But I didn't expect to be thrown on at 20 minutes notice. So I got into that. I didn't really, when I got into that, rather, I didn't have the life experience, I think, that I had later on. And when I actually took on the role of the Phantom full time in 1999, I mean, I was playing it one time 4 nights a week as Raoul, 4 nights a week as Phantom. That was scheduled for 6 to 8 months or more. So but it was on 99 when I took on the role, because I was going through a breakup, I was going through a marriage, a divorce, and of course, it was difficult with contact with the children and everything else. And certainly, there's one scene that always gets me, which was at the end, very end, which says it all really. When she goes off and gives him the ring back. After he says, Christine, I love you, and she goes off in the boat with Raoul, and he comes and he comes on stage and he sees the veil, when the veil is on the floor. Of course, I'm talking about the Phantom of the Opera, the musical, but when he sees the veil on the floor, and he just completely melts down. And something that really got me interested with that, it's an interesting thing to do with that, should I say, was that it was a remnant that was sort of left behind. It was a symbol of this bride that he'd created, and he'd fallen in love with her voice, but more madly in love with the girl to such it became an obsession, and nobody else was, allowed to go near her, and she had to play every role, every lead, she couldn't be with Raoul, of course not. I mean, it was a total obsession. In that sense, it's all about her, and to have that obsession, and also, but it's not. See, to him it wasn't obsession. To him it was right. It was, he was doing everything right, and he was protecting her. But that thing at the end, when all the buttons he presses doesn't work, and then the veil is left at the end, I used to lose it completely. And I tell you what, really, sort of, when I really found that moment, and how that was so symbolic, was that my children used to come and stay with me during this difficult time when I was going through the breakup and things, and not seeing much of the young children. And they would come and stay, and then, of course, I'd take them back. And just before I'd go to the show, I'd notice I'd look across the room, and I go, oh, they've left their coat, but more importantly, they left a toy. One of them had left a toy behind, and I used to just break my heart, really. See that? That's Freddie's toy. That's not Posey's toy, or whoever had left it behind. It was just like, and I'd sit and hold it, and just absolutely lose myself in that moment, once I brought that, I understood then as an actor. I understood, and I think that's when I really started to develop that empathy for Eric, for the Phantom, and totally understand that pain. And certainly of that moment of the veil was like, for me, it was like the moment of that toy left behind, that doll left behind, and it was, I think for me, it was one of the most powerful moments of the show. So simple, but no dialogue, nothing, just a scene, a moment, and it was just very, very powerful.
For the love of musicals, you're listening to Theatreland Radio.
To Paris, and none of us has ever been the same since. It all started with a scream because someone was scared. Some are scared of monsters underneath the bed. Some are scared of bloodstains, all sticky, warm, and red. Some are scared of phantoms created in their head. Maybe that's the worst. Tell you what I mean, but first. Some are scared of legend. Some are scared of rumor. Some are scared 'cause frankly they have no sense of humor. Some are scared of footsteps that echo in the hall. But someone different will scare us all. Someone in the darkness, someone that we turn from, someone with a difference no one wants to learn from, someone who may sit and crawl or swing, who changes everything.
Some are scared of cases with unopened lids.
Some are are scared of places with lots and lots of kids.
Some are scared of futures that make them face the past.
Tell you what that means. What it means is
Not so fast. Some are scared of old things. Some are scared of new. Some are scared to hold things that like to hold you too. Some are scared to triumph, and some are scared to fall. But someone different, unfamiliar,
well, someone different.
will scare us all.
Will scare us all.
Will scare us all. Will scare us all.
Will scare us.
That was Someone Different from the Theatreworks version of Phantom of the Opera. We will do a playlist later online for all the songs we haven't mentioned, because maybe you would like to hear some of the productions, because there are amazing versions that are rarely heard there. Now we return to Mike Sterling. Mike, how does it feel to play Eric?
To perform the role, how does it feel? Right. Firstly, exhausting. I mean, that's obviously afterwards. But when you're actually really in the various moments, and certainly with regards to the changes of the various, to play them honestly, the changes of personalities within Eric was quite. It was very direct, and it was most efficient. Very efficient. It was like snap, 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 snap. It would go in and out of different things, because that's always. It's not like he was trying to do these things. This is how his mind was working to survive. I think, because I think he for so long he'd lived this life as a recluse, but had such a lot of anger, I think, and rightfully so, on the way that he'd been treated for so long. But there was kindness, within him. There was love. There was that majestic side. That was that childlike side. There was the frantic musician, the genius, the designer, the magician. The whole. There was so many different sides. And yeah, I mean, we've all got different sides to us, and somebody wrongs us, we all react in different ways. And but Eric's process with changing from different things and how the text would relay that was very, very, very urgent. I'm saying very, very efficient, certainly, and as the effect from the audience point of view, it was intense, and I felt it was an absolute privilege to play that role. And I mean, I'd love to play it again. I mean, I'm still not too old, I don't think, but it was intense. And I think as well, being in the show too, within the people that you knew and the directors you knew, I was in it at a time which was such a magic time for musical theatre in general. And of course, it wasn't that long really after the show had opened, so there was still that excitement about Phantom, and certainly the level of sort of pride to play a role like that, and be so blessed to have that every night, 8 nights a week, in fact, was just, it's nothing like it really. It was nothing like it.
Does it differ greatly from playing Raoul?
How does it differ from Raoul? Like chalk and cheese. I mean, I think there was certainly something which Eric would see in Raoul that he was obviously jealous of. He was jealous of the fact that obviously Christine was getting close to him, and he didn't like that because he was, losing control. And that's one of the things where again, we study this kind of coercive behavior that some people put upon others, which is of course very abusive. But he didn't see that as being wrong. As again, is what he felt and what he did. And of course, somebody whispering in somebody's ear about something that somebody said, and that person that has said that wants them to go a certain way. But of course, somebody else pulls them away from it, and she's hearing these things, and he doesn't believe her, but yet he's doing it in such a way. Certainly, the way I played Raoul was I didn't say to Christine, "Oh, stop it! It's all fables," don't you know? Because that's sort of insulting her intelligence, really, and that's I think invalidating her feelings as well. And that's the way I played Raoul, that I never invalidated what she said. And I've seen him in his eyes that are blazing, and you know it's his darkness, and he speaks to me from the mirror or whatever she says. I'm like, well, look, if I believe it, if you believe it, I'm serious. We need to talk about this, but I just want to let you know I'm here, and I will look after you. It doesn't matter whatever it is. If this is real, this is going on, and I'm here to protect you. No one's going to come, sort of against that. And I think, of course, he listens to everything, Phantom. So he, it's a complete. He was like the braving suitor, the nemesis. He was no match for Eric, of course. And I think everyone knows that. He knew that eventually when he realised it was real. So, but I think the difference was chalk and cheese. But yeah, I actually played them both. 4 times a week Raoul, 4 times a week Phantom, and all I can say, it was total chalk and cheese. The characters, you can't get 2 different approaches for a role, really, but not just vocally, but in every way. I mean, and of course, psychologically would change everything you did about Phantom, whatever you felt. And it was never the same every night, just like Raoul wasn't the same, really, but completely different individuals. And of course, don't forget, Raoul, as I say, was the Vicomte de Chagny. He'd become from a very, very privileged background. And of course, Phantom had come from the most, deprived sort of situation and abuse, really. So it's very, very interesting. I'd like to dig more, and I think this, even though I played it over 1,000 times, I would love to dig more with the Phantom. And I'm too old to play Raoul now, so that's probably out of it. But I can coach, and I can, and I certainly am still passionate, and I have recently coached other people with regards to the duo that is Christine and Raoul, and it's very exciting. But yeah, totally different human beings completely, but I had great fun, equal fun playing both.
Is there anything you would like to say to the fans?
Hello, all you wonderful Phantom fans. I would like to say, and I've not really had this opportunity for a while, thank you, and thank you for everything that you have given me, really, and what you've given the show, because really it is down to your absolute dedication to support us and follow us for all these years, it's one of these phenomenons which doesn't come around very often, and I share whatever you feel. I share with you your passion and everything else to do with the Phantom of the Opera, and I thank you for your solidarity and your support and dedication, to us for so many years. And I've had such a wonderful time doing both roles, both Raoul and the Phantom, 5 years in total. So I've been blessed, and it's always been a delight to see you guys after the show, before the show, out and about sometimes, sometimes I bump into people in town when I'm walking about, and it's always great to see. But I do think every show does, we do need you, And we do appreciate you. We do appreciate what you've given to us for the last, let me see, 35 years nearly. That's quite phenomenal. And I know there's been there's new, of course, fans of Phantom. And of course, we've got the long-standing ones that have been around since the beginning. And they've never waned. That's one thing I've found. It's never waned off. Once you're a fan of this show, I don't think it ever leaves you. Other shows will come along, but once something like this grabs you, typically Phantom, people have never ever left it. My friends, my colleagues, people that are not in my business, but they say, "Oh, Mike, but Phantom was just it. That was it, man." For them, some say Les Mis, some say, but Phantom is so powerful. So right, but now we're into the situation where we're at, where we can't express that, and you've not been able to go and see the various shows around the world, wherever you are listening to this. But it's sad. It's sad, but it's happened, but it doesn't mean it's over. And we will get back, and we will be better than ever. We will be, because and people in our business, whenever there's adversity in any situation, through wars, through anything else, and this has been very like a war, to be quite honest, is that there's always been our business to be there, to have people that to be able to escape for 2 hours, say, in any whatever show you're in, particularly Phantom. They escape for 2.5 hours, forget about the world, and it's just about the world of the Phantom of the Opera. But that's the power of the piece. But it's taken the power of the fans and the people that have followed the show for so long to maintain that and to give it that prowess. And I thank them, and I thank you all immensely for that. But we will be back, and it will pass eventually, but I think we'll all be a lot closer for it. I think the business will be a lot closer for it, and I truly believe, and I must believe, and I will continue this, that thought that is the world will be much closer together. Best of luck as well for the restaurant, and I hope that everything goes well. We'll keep supporting it, and I say to everybody, just really, support this cause. It's very, very important, not just to Gaston, but to Phantom of the Opera, to all you guys out there. So maybe we'll have dinner there one day. You never know. I might see you there. So sending lots of love, and thank you for everything over the years, and for being brave and really sort of sticking in. With everything, and I just hope that you're all fine out there, and I send you loads and loads of love.
Thank you so much, Mike. Now remember, we're doing this for La Cave de Gaston Leroux. You can find ways to donate and lots of other information on the Theatreland website. After this song, we'll be joined by Jonathan Roxmouth, who will talk about what it was like to be the only Phantom in the world last year, and lots of other things.
Love's a curious thing, it often comes disguised.
Look at love the wrong way, it goes unrecognized.
So look with your heart and not with your eyes. The heart understands, the heart never lies. Believe what it feels and trust what it shows. Look with the heart always knows. Love is not always beautiful.
Not at the start.
Open your arms and close your eyes tight. Look with the heart, and when it finds love, your
from someone who knows. Make sure you don't forget.
Love you misunderstand is love that you regret.
Look with your heart and not with your eyes. The heart can't be fooled.
The heart is too wise.
Forget what you think.
Ignore what you hear.
Look with your heart, it always seems clear. Love is not always beautiful, not at the start. But open your arms and close your eyes tight. Look with your heart, and when it finds love, your heart will be right. But open your arms and close your eyes tight. Look with your heart, and when it finds love, your heart will be right.
A warm welcome to Jonathan Roxmouth.
Hey, Danny.
Had you ever seen Phantom the musical or read the book before you auditioned for the show?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw the original South African production of Phantom, which that was 2004. So, yeah, 2004. I went with a friend of mine, and I knew of the music because it was part of my sort of family that told me all sorts of things about the show and all of that. But I didn't know what the songs were like in context. And so I saw the original production in South Africa. And even at interval, I turned to my friend and I said, I have to be in the show one day. Like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I stayed in touch with it. And, 7 years later, they had auditions for the revival in South Africa. And I joined the production then. And from there on, it's been a long, sort of wonderful relationship with the show.
What are your thoughts on Eric, and how did you decide to play him the way you did?
Well, I mean, everybody thinks that the book and the musical are 100% the same thing, and they aren't. The musical focuses more on the romance, whereas the novel itself is more about the intrigue, the mystery, the horror of it. It's quite a sprawling novel. It doesn't have one sort of narrative style. You have different people's opinions of the Phantom and bits of information that are presented about the Phantom, whereas the musical presents everything all at once. But I think the common link between the two, certainly that I picked up, I think playing him when I was 24 meant that I had to use my youth as opposed to somebody who's normally in their late 40s playing the role. I had to use my youth back then as a way into the role, and it works because he is like an abandoned child, who's just looking for love in the simplest terms. But aside from that, he's constantly described as a prodigy. That does imply youth. We're not dealing with somebody, who's fully established in their late 50s and, he's a prodigy. So it implies that he's young. And I kind of kept that immature, impatient, childish quality to him. It makes sense, if you think about the end of Act 1, somebody who is together and able to think like an adult wouldn't throw a chandelier at somebody who has chosen somebody else. He'd move on with his life. Whereas the Phantom, all he's equipped to do is just go, ah, you know, you will curse the day you did not do all the Phantom asked to be, and he throws a chandelier. Now, aside from being fantastic theatre, that does show that he is not really capable of, and I want to underline that, he's not capable. It's not that he doesn't want to. He just doesn't have it in him to think about things like an adult. He acts impulsively, and then he actually has remorse afterwards. You know, it's interesting that later in the book, Madame Giry describes all those events as accidents. There have been too many accidents, you know, and I think that tells you something about him as well. There is a big heart there. He just doesn't know what to do with it.
It's true, and I think because he's been traumatized, it says you always refer to the point of your first trauma when you experience the next trauma, and then he would probably regress because everything started very young for him.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, a child who's abandoned is damaged. A child who's abandoned because of the way they look, that's another level. And for a child to be abandoned by their mother, you know, his first interaction with her was in the book. It's a slightly different story, but in the musical, you know, he speaks about how a mask, you know, she clapped that bit of cloth over his face, his first unfeeling scrap of clothing, you know. That does something to somebody, you know, and certainly I think more than ever, the idea that, you know, the Phantom is a creation of what happens when society comes across something or somebody different to them.
True.
You know, it's still relevant to today, whether it's the topic of bullying, whether it's the topic of ostracizing people because of their beliefs, their looks, their feelings, whatever. The way they are born, I should say. People are born with all sorts of things that society deems as an abomination. It could be physical, it could be who they are inside, it could be, you know, their DNA, all of that stuff. It's more relevant than ever. It's quite amazing.
True, I first came across the Phantom when I was suffering from bullying, so I both related to him and wanted him to protect me like he would do Christine in some ways.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that the Phantom is a result of bullying. He himself is not a bully.
True, it's
my version.
Yes. Well, I can feel that because I think everything he expects to be treated a certain way, and that's why he reacts the way he does, because that's all he's used to.
I mean, he has an idea of what he thinks normal treatment is. If you think about the good side of his face, that side, that's the mask, that's the good side. He is deliberately painted to look like, you know, the inspiration is Rudolph Valentino, but it's what he thinks is beautiful, or what he thinks other people will find beautiful. And he doesn't really know what his own version of that is, you know. And there's this wonderful documentary about the Canadian production of Phantom with Colm Wilkinson and Rebecca Kane, and I think it's Hal Prince, the late Hal Prince, who says that, you know, this is the bad side and this is the good side, but it's actually the other way around. The bad side is the good side that he presents. The good side is actually that deformity, because that's who he is. And I think it's that tussle between what he thinks society sees as good and what he feels as society is good, you know, and it's that battle between the two that make him so interesting and tragic, because ultimately, you know, whether it's the book or the musical or Hal Prince or Andrew Lloyd Webber or Michael Crawford talking about it, the common thing that comes up is he just wants to be loved. And who can't relate to that?
Last year you were the only Phantom in the world. How did that feel for you? Yes.
You know, as time has gone by, I mean, I was acutely aware of what an honor it was while it was happening. Especially, it's my favorite role, it's my favorite show, and I have an opportunity to just keep the flag flying until all the other Phantoms are able to get back on stage all around the world. But I think what people forget is the pressure of that, the stress of that, the fear of disappointing people. At times got the better of me, to be honest. There were a few times in Korea where we were on tour at that point where I bombed out emotionally. And you know, any singer will tell you if they are bombing out emotionally, there's no voice, there's no strength. And there were many times where I just wanted to just stay in my room because the fear of disappointing people who love the Phantom as much as I do, or love the show as much as I do, was really quite daunting for me. I was very fortunate to have wonderful company around me, a very conscientious management, but also, you know, special mention has to be made of my Christine, Claire Lyon, who was such a wonderful balancing energy around the entire situation. You know, I remember one particular performance, I started having a panic attack just before Music of the Night. Now, if you know the Phantom,
yes,
once you're on stage, once you are in that mirror, you know, I am your angel, and you call Christine, you're on stage right up until the end of Come We Must Return, at the end of the morning after scene, Stranger Than You Dreamt It. And she knew that I wasn't okay, and she just, you know, for the whole of that Music of the Night, she just held my hand. And we changed all the staging. I just stayed center stage and I held her hand. And I think it showed exactly where all of us were at that point. We either were in need of nurturing or felt the obligation to nurture. And to be able to do that with the show was amazing. But goodness me, it was a lot of pressure.
Child of the wilderness, born into emptiness, learn to be lonely, learn to find your way in darkness. Who will be there for you? Comfort and care for you. Learn to be lonely. Learn to be your one companion. Never dream that out in the world there are arms to hold you. You've always known your heart was on its own. So laugh in your loneliness, child of the wilderness. Learn to be lonely. Learn how to love life that is lived alone. Learn to be lonely. Life can be lived, life can be loved alone.
That was Jonathan Roxmouth with Learn to be Lonely. Now we continue our interview. Jonathan, you are known to be a big fan of Michael Crawford and his interpretation of the role. Could you tell us more about that?
Michael Crawford is, you know, put Phantom aside, just as an actor. If you look at his career, the thing I've always looked up to with him is his versatility. Barnum, Billy, Hello Dolly, Phantom, Dance of the Vampires, Wizard of Oz, The Go-Between, all of this wonderful work is a versatility that speaks of an actor who's constantly trying to reinvent himself and isn't afraid of being a chameleon and being completely unrecognizable. If we're talking about Phantom, he will always be the Phantom that I always look back at as not only the benchmark, but as the example of just how powerful the show is. You know, he joined that production as a comedy star, and that role and what he was able to do with it, with Hal Prince and Andrew Lloyd Webber and that wonderful team, changed his career, changed his life, and that role remains something that'll change an actor's life to this day because of him, because he found a completely different style, a completely different way into the character, because I think he's singing. You know, if it was a play, it would be completely different, but the Phantom actually bursts into song. And for me, Michael Crawford has always found a way to make that moment the logical progression of the Phantom's emotion. You know, his hands, his walk, the way he looks at Christine, the way he emotes in his voice. I think, you know, he's got that very, very high voice, which is almost angelic in a way. So it makes sense that he's the angel of music. But aside from that, I recognize in Michael Crawford the same love I have for the character, because in many ways there are parts of the character that I see myself in, and vice versa. And I think he did as well. It's a very, very special part of my life. And you know, when I was first doing Phantom, YouTube was still becoming a thing in 2011, where you could actually get bootlegs of other productions. And I remember I was doing a production of Grease in late 2010, and Phantom was the following year, and the auditions were coming up. And I was coming off stage during Grease and playing bits of Michael Crawford's Final Lair. And I would turn to my dressing and say, see, now that's a real show. I want to be in that show. And I'm playing Danny Zuko in Grease, you know. And it wasn't that I was ungrateful. I was just so ready for a new challenge. We'd done Grease, we'd had that fun. Now I wanted to make people feel something, which I hadn't had an opportunity to do up to that point. Phantom came along and gave me that opportunity. And I found an interview with Michael Crawford, and he says, you know, comedy is the hardest thing to do. But if you can make somebody cry, it's a close second. And I've really felt that I've met amazing people. I've grown as a performer, but I've also found new understanding for people who have gone through stuff by playing this role.
One of your other favorites is said to be Ethan Freeman, who is also on the show tonight.
When I was in Manila doing the show, when I was first starting out, I got a bad case of laryngitis. And everybody kept saying to me, just sing it more like a tenor, sing it more like a tenor. And I never understood what they were saying. And Kristen Blodgett, the conductor, said to me, just picture a singer who you can emulate for a while until your voice is fine. Ethan Freeman was that singer. And I would always go to the conductor, David Andrew Rogers, and say, okay, today's going to be an Ethan Freeman show. I'm going to be nice and light and effortless. So he, for the longest time, was like my medicine, vocally.
Do you have a message for the fans?
You know, I think being on the world tour, I've been able to see just how universal the Phantom effect is. Not me, I'm saying the show. The fact that I've been to places where English is not the first language, or places where musicals aren't always popular, and people's reception to the Phantom, the show, the character, everything is the same wherever I've toured. And there's no other show that has a fandom like Phantom. It is a very special, very unique, very dedicated fan base. And as much as, you know, there are the ups and downs with fans and actors and productions, I don't know that I'll ever come across this kind of love because of work that I'm doing, that I'm lucky enough to do. To say that I'm appreciative or that I'm grateful to that fan base because of the show is not just an understatement. I think it's a bit lazy. I hope the fans realize what it means to somebody who was bullied, who did grow up desperate to be on the stage, who did grow up desperate wanting to connect with people, to have this platform to connect with all of these people around the world because they feel the same way because remember, I'm a fan first. I'm playing the Phantom at the moment, but I was a fan first. I'm one of them. So the fact that I'm now loved by the very community that I was part of is an amazing feeling. And I really hope they know what a difference it makes in my life. And I'm happy to continue doing this as long as I'm too old to be the Phantom one day. Because especially being able to tour around the world now with theatre and perform, I'm fully aware of the richness of it right now, and I do not take it for granted. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to Theatreland Radio.
Then my world was shattered. Wishing you were somehow here again. Wishing you were somehow near. Sometimes it seemed if I just dreamed, somehow you I could hear your voice again, knowing that I never would. Dreaming of you won't help me to do all that you dreamed I could. Passing bells and sculpted angels, cold and monumental, seem for you the wrong companions. You are warm and gentle. Too many years fighting back tears. Why can't the past just die? Wishing you were somehow here again, knowing we must say goodbye. Try to forgive, teach me to live, give me the strength to try. No more memories, no more silent tears, no more gazing across the wasted years. Help me say goodbye. Help me say
That was Michael Crawford with Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again. Now we are back with Ethan Freeman. Ethan?
You have created a painting to be auctioned for the event. Could you tell me about it?
Yes, it's almost finished, I think. It started out as me just wanting to play with impasto oil technique. I'm not a trained painter. I've never gone to art school in that sense. And I wanted to just work technically on developing the wet on wet oil technique in portrait painting. And actually it first started out as a really weird face. And I was going to entitle it Your New Next Door Neighbor to give people sort of a strange face. But then I had the idea of working it into a phantom portrait. And as in most of my paintings, if I let them, they turn into what they gradually turn into something. And I adjust them and work on them. I painted a portrait of Eric many, many years ago, which I called Poor Eric, which was also auctioned at the time for a benefit. But I found that I thought of the cause for which you are attempting to raise money now, and I thought this might be a nice opportunity to paint something that people who love the Phantom might be willing to spend money on in order for it to go to a good cause. And so I continued to work in the direction of finding an unmasked version of the Phantom. It's not a self-portrait. It's probably has some elements of me in it, but it's also just a idealized version of Eric as he came out of my brush, so to speak. And I've been having a lot of fun working on it, building up the layers and trying to get it realer and realer, and with variation of expression and capturing several parts of who I feel the character is. Yeah, we'll see how it comes out in the end. I'm getting reasonably pleased with it at this point. And I hope that someone will like it enough to want to have it in their home and as it were, then donate some more money for the Gaston Leroux's Cave du Fantôme, or a Cave de Gaston Leroux. Okay, is that actually still in their family?
Well, she's renting the building, but while the restaurant is still hers, she's the great-granddaughter of Gaston.
Okay. So they yeah, and they're on the verge of bankruptcy due to Corona, due to lack of tourism.
Well, they had to close down, and because she's renting the building, they're still asking for rent, even though she has no customers.
Yeah. Oh dear.
You can find details on how to donate and how to bid for Ethan's portrait on the Theatreland website. Ethan?
Having performed the role in 4 different countries, was it always different for you, and which version did you prefer?
Oh, that's a hard question. Yes, no, yes. The show was always the same in really many, many, many ways. Obviously, different cast, different setting, different sound system, different theater, different pathways, but the show and the role stayed very consistent for me in many ways over the course of the different years and the different productions. Obviously starting in Vienna with a completely new production was a brilliant experience. As alternate, I got to do 200 shows, which was, a really great crack at the role as a very young man for the role. And that was a very fine production, great cast, fantastic orchestra, perfect theater, Theater de Wien, beautiful opera house. That was a wonderful production. I think my favorite production was at Her Majesty's, because all of the ingredients and playing the role in my own language, all the ingredients came together. I think the humor of the show works perhaps a tiny bit better in English than it does in German. It was a wonderful cast, a fine orchestra, also a beautiful classical theater. And I really had the chance over almost 2 years as first cast then to settle into the role and make my mark in the role. So I think altogether, I think the London run was for me probably the most satisfying experience. I think the show and the role were basically the same in many ways. The staging never changed substantially, with the exception of in London, we still caught Christine in our arms at the Mirror Bride doll. And that was removed from all the other productions by then. And which I thought was a shame, because I always enjoyed that moment. But I understood Hal's rationale. He said, I think he changed it already in Vienna. He wants the audience themselves to wonder how Christine gets from the floor to the bed, and what happens in between. He wanted that left up to the audience's imagination, rather than them seeing the romantic, gracious, very effective catching of Christine as she faints and carrying her to the bed boat. That was his rationale for changing that after London.
Never heard that.
Okay, well, there's a new story for you.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the reason why that changed.
They say that once you have been the Phantom, the role never leaves you. Is that true?
Yes, I would say so. First of all, because it's a role that sort of takes you to the heart of who you are as an actor, as a person. I think you need to examine yourself very deeply and closely in order to get the most out of a part like that. It's not the only part like that, I would say. And, particularly if, as I have, and, there are obviously a number of colleagues of mine who've played the role 1,000 times or more. I think any role you play that often becomes a big part of your life, and the songs never leave you. If I really need to see what I'm doing vocally, I will pull out Music of the Night and say, what's my voice doing now with the song? It's just it's a benchmark for, what kind of shape I'm in vocally. It's, if I say, oh, I've changed this or that, how would I go back and relate it to that song? In that sense, as a singer, it's a role that is made a tremendous impression on my life as a singer, as an actor. So I think it definitely, a role like that changes your life one way or the other.
Is there any message you have for the fans?
Keep up the good faith, as it were. I hope that the show will reopen somewhere, someday, sooner rather than later. And I hope that the love that you all have for the show will not have diminished as a result of the corona plague, and that you will all still be able to treasure those characters and their sad and joyous fates, and laugh and cry with all of them, and see Eric's pain and struggle for what it is, and be able to relate to it, and have sympathy, and have anger, and love for all of those wonderful characters. I hope that that does not die with the other victims of Corona.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're listening to Theatreland Radio.
And wakes imagination. the senses abandon their defenses. Slowly, gently, night unfurls its splendor. Grasp it, sense it, tremulous and tender. Turn your face away from the garish light of day. Turn your thoughts away from cold, unfeeling light, and listen to the music of the night. Close your eyes and surrender to your darkest dreams. Purge your thoughts of the life in you before. Close your eyes, let your spirit start to soar. And you'll live as you've never lived before. Softly, deftly, music shall caress you. Hear it, feel it, secretly possess you. Open up your mind, let your fantasies unwind in this darkness which you know you cannot fight. The darkness of the music of the night. Let your mind start a journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the world you knew before. Let your soul take you where you long to be. Only then can you belong to me. Floating, falling, sweet intoxication. Touch me, trust me, savor each sensation. Let the dream begin, let your darker side give in to the power of the music that I write. The power of the music of the
We have now reached the end of our Phantom-themed night. We hope that you have enjoyed it and have donated to the wonderful La Cave de Gaston Leroux. As said before, all details on how to donate, how to bid for Ethan Freeman's painting and much, much more is available on the Theatreland website. So, this is the end for tonight. But we at Theatreland will return to the world of Phantom and discuss for many months to come. My name was Danny Cohen. Thank you for listening.
For 1,000 years, I've waited for that miraculous kiss. Today is just today, not terrors from the past. Tomorrow's fears are gone. Today is just a joy that is meant to last. I am loved for who I am, with all my faults and all my years. I am loved for me. Not my songs and not my voice, despite my face behind my mask. I am loved for me. I am loved for me. So many years I seldom went out, settled for life of 88 keys. So many years the sounds were my son, letting me live as well as I could. But now I can live up there when it's real. My Christine has taught me that I can feel and beat wonderhead. Done once triumph will tame you. My dearest friend will soon be too. Now I know that I can live free. This is joy, being loved. I am loved for me, for me, for me.
Poor unhappy Eric. Shall we pity him? Shall we curse him? He asked only to be someone like everybody else, but he was too ugly. And he had to hide his genius or use it to play tricks with, when, with an ordinary face, he would have been one of the most distinguished of mankind. He had a heart that could have held the empire of the world, and in the end, he had to content himself with a cellar. Ah, yes, we must needs pity the opera ghost.
Coming to you live from the UK, celebrating the world of theatre. You're listening to Theatreland Radio. From Hamilton to the Wizard of Oz, the sound of the stage on Theatreland Radio.
Looking for a bit of new music, new musicals or new writing? Well, look no further. Every single Monday here on Theatreland Radio, me, myself and I, Kate McKeown, are presenting a show called New Musicals Monday.